Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests and students. This presentation is a special one that is significantly different from other presentations we have had during this school year. Although this is on video, I'd like you all to imagine we are together in the gym, actively participating in this ceremony. This is a remembrance ceremony. In ceremonies, we express our respect for the ceremony through silence, participation, and reflection. Please turn off all electronic devices, take off your headphones, take out your earbuds. Do not chat with friends. Sit and stand respectfully when asked to do so. With that reminder, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Nakazli Watan, and that we will now start our Remembrance Day ceremony. Students, ladies and gentlemen, could you all stand for the singing of O Canada? You may all be seated. July 28th, 1914 marked the start of World War I. About 625,000 Canadian soldiers served in that war. Canada's contribution was significant, unprecedented, and costly. On November 11th, 1918, at 11 a.m., the First World War came to the end. By the end of the war, 1 in 3 Canadian soldiers had been killed or injured. As a nation, we mourn the loss and injury of 25,000 Canadian soldiers. Remembrance Day ceremonies offer veterans the opportunity to remember and salute fallen comrades, and an opportunity for all Canadians an occasion to reflect on the sacrifices made and the tragedies endured in their name. As we reflect, some of you may wonder what really happened. What was it like? With the passing of time, how will those memories live on? Some of us know how those memories will live on, through stories passed on from generation to generation.
On My Great-Grandfather's by Carson Wenger. On Remembrance Day, we honor those who have sacrificed for our country. We remember those who have served in the past wars and those that serve today to keep us safe. This has always been a very important day to me, as both my paternal great-grandfathers served in World War II. My grandpa's father, John Langer, was part of the Heavy Artillery Unit and also served as a cook in the Swiss Army. He would tell fascinating stories of his time in the war to my dad. He passed away when I was only 3, but my family continues to share stories with me and my brother. My grandma's father, Kenneth Scotty McGregor, served in the Canadian Royal Air Force and was just 19 years old when he enlisted. He flew in over 75 missions as a flight lieutenant. During a bombing mission between England and Germany, he experienced engine trouble while in a Wellington bomber. The plane crashed and he escaped into a dinghy where he floated in the river for over 15 hours. He Crashed landed a total of 3 different times during different missions and was eventually taken prisoner of war. He was a prisoner of war for 240 days, and over that time, he lost all his teeth due to malnutrition. He served in the war from 1939 to 1945 and received many awards for his service, including the Distinguished Flying Cross, one of the most prestigious medals you can get as a flight lieutenant, the United Kingdom Medal, and the Maple Leaf Bar. My great-grandpa McGregor passed away before I was born, but my great-uncle, Scotty's son, keeps his memory alive by telling his stories and preserving his medals. It is my wish that on Remembrance Day, we all take time to remember the sacrifices that have been made and continue to be made, so that we can all live in peace and freedom.
In the days leading up to Remembrance Day, the wearing of poppies has been a symbol of honoring those who gave the ultimate sacrifice. The person who first introduced poppies to Canada and the Commonwealth was Canadian field surgeon John McCrae. May 1915, in the midst of the Second Battle of Ypres in Belgium, John McCrae wrote a poem that is today the most widely read poem of the war. Carla Howell and Willa Crowley will read for us In Flanders Field.
Logat Huacho, In Flanders Fields. Translated by Elder Mildred Martin and Yvonne Piroy. Logat Huacho, In Diaz Nalsi. Talalkas Bekas Huedilia. Neye Hudat en is Ndo Yata. Dit Ayas Hajan in is Nahato. Alkit to Bazdozo Haito.
We are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow. Loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields.
Ne jaz digni ne ba balchut. No ni no san ne la tet sanhwe. Kwan ulaz dat ni ndo utan. Zut hez haito et salaja de mbela. Yaidlane et huns eat log at Huacho in Diaz Hanaye.
This year marks the 75th year anniversary of VJ, or Victory over Japan Day, and the end of World War II. After almost 6 long years of fighting, the Second World War finally came to an end on the 15th of August, 1945, when Japanese forces surrendered. While most of Canada's efforts in the Second World War were focused in Europe, our country committed forces against Japan in Asia and the Pacific. More than 10,000 Canadians served in that theater of war.
Canadian service members were involved in the struggle against Japan during the Second World War from the beginning. The fighting in Asia and the Pacific was not started only by the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on the 7th of December 1941. Japanese forces also struck other British and American targets in the region, like the British colony of Hong Kong, where 1,975 Canadians had arrived only a few weeks earlier.
The war started in Hong Kong on the 7th, see? And from the 7th to the 25th, we were fighting.
It was very difficult to hold any position with our limited manpower. But the Canadians fought without any hesitation.
They put on 40,000 men against our 6. And they had another 40,000 waiting on the other side.
These brave soldiers were mostly members of the Royal Rifles of Canada and the Winnipeg Grenadiers. Greatly outnumbered, the Allied forces in Hong Kong held out in the face of fierce enemy assaults for 2.5 weeks before they were finally forced to surrender.
We were taken prisoner on December 25th, 1941, Christmas Day.
In all, 290 Canadians died in the fighting, and the remainder were captured. The survivors would spend the rest of the war, more than 3.5 years, in harsh Japanese prisoner of war camps, where 264 more of them would lose their lives as a result of the back-breaking labor, beatings, disease, and starvation they endured. The Royal Canadian Air Force also played a role in the war against the Japanese from the start. Many of our airmen would be assigned to Royal Air Force units that were sent all over the world, including Asia. Thousands of RCAF members would serve in the region, most of them as part of the Burma campaign. They would fill a wide variety of roles, from being radar operators to flying with RAF or RCAF, bomber, transport, reconnaissance, and fighter squadrons. The Royal Canadian Navy would also play a supporting role in the struggle against Japan when HMCS Uganda joined the British Pacific Fleet in time to participate in the Allied operations around Okinawa in the spring of 1945. HMCS Prince Robert, which had helped transport Canadian troops to Hong Kong in 1941, also had the satisfaction of returning there after the Japanese surrender to help the newly liberated Canadian prisoners of war. Canadian Merchant Navy sailors also served throughout this part of the world on Canadian and Allied transport vessels, helping carry the troops and cargoes essential to the eventual Allied victory in the Pacific. The dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki would force the Japanese to finally surrender, and the 15th of August 1945 would be declared Victory over Japan VJ Day. After almost 6 years of bitter fighting, the Second World War was over at last, kicking off both massive celebrations and grief for the many lives that had been lost. More than 10,000 Canadians served in Asia and the Pacific during the conflict, and we remember their great courage and sacrifice.
So the story is about the Canadian spirit. 3,000 miles from home, with no hope, they never gave up.
World War I was supposed to be the war that ended all wars, but clearly it did not. Canadians continued to give their lives in the fight for freedom. World War II, Korean War, Persian Gulf War, Somali Civil War, Bosnian War, Kosovo War, Afghanistan War. In the past year, our country lost 9 members of our Canadian Armed Forces while being on active duty. Bombardier Patrick Labrie, 28, 2nd Regiment, Royal Canadian Horse Artillery, Petawawa, Ontario. Master Corporal Matthew Cousins, 43, 423rd Maritime Helicopter Squadron, 12th Wing, Shearwater. Sub-Lieutenant Matthew Pike, 34, Her Majesty's Canadian Ship, Fredericton. Captain Maxime Miron Maureen, 29, 423rd Maritime Helicopter Squadron, 12th Wing, Shearwater. Captain Kevin Hagan, 30, 423rd Maritime Helicopter Squadron, 12th Wing, Shearwater. Captain Brendan Ian McDonald, 35, 423rd Maritime Helicopter Squadron, 12th Wing, Shearwater. Sub-Lieutenant Abigail Cowbrough, 23, Her Majesty's Canadian Ship, Fredericton. Captain Jennifer Casey, 35, Canadian Forces Snowbirds, 431st Air Demonstration Squadron, Corporal James Choi, 29, the Royal Westminster Regiment. To honor those who have fallen in the fight for our freedoms, it is now time in today's ceremony for 2 minutes of silence. During this time of reflection, I would ask that you honor, thank, and remember those that have given the ultimate sacrifice. Could everyone please stand for 2 minutes of silence? To close today's Remembrance Day ceremonies, I would like to read to you that passage that is engraved on cenotaphs, war memorials, and headstones in war cemeteries throughout the English-speaking world, and is known as the Ode of Remembrance by Lawrence Binyon. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them, lest we forget. This brings to the end of our Remembrance Day ceremonies, and we would like to thank you for your participation.